The vast emptiness of space surrounding Dexar Prime suddenly rippled as a single warship tore through the fabric of reality. The vessel's hull, scorched and battle-worn, reflected no light from the distant star. Across its side, bold lettering proclaimed its name: Defiance. It was human-made, the first of its kind to enter this sector of the galaxy. A forbidden zone under the iron rule of the Vex Dominion for 3 centuries. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge, her weathered face illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. Earth was gone, consumed by the Vex Armada 6 months ago. The Dominion had crushed 27 worlds before reaching humanity's cradle, never expecting resistance. They had never encountered humans before. "Status report," Thorne commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. The Defiance carried the last organized military force of humanity. 800 souls aboard a vessel designed for 3,000. "All systems operational after the jump, Admiral," replied Reed, her tactical officer. "We've emerged exactly where planned. Dexar Prime, the homeworld of the Vex Dominion." On the view screen, a massive planet hung in space, surrounded by orbital platforms and defensive arrays that sparkled like deadly jewelry. The nerve center of an empire that spanned a third of the galaxy. An empire built on fear. "They've detected us," announced Vega, communications specialist. "Incoming transmission." A figure materialized on the central display, tall, with iridescent scales covering elongated limbs. 6 eyes blinked in sequence across an angular face. "High Commander Zex of the Vex Dominion. Unidentified vessel," the creature spoke, its universal translator converting the clicks and whistles into human language. "You have entered prohibited space. Identify yourself immediately or face annihilation." Thorne stepped forward. "This is Admiral Elise Thorne of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are here to discuss terms." The High Commander's upper eyes narrowed. "Earth? The primitive world in System J3291? Impossible. That system was cleansed." "Not completely," Thorne replied, coldly. "Your forces destroyed our world, but humanity is not so easily erased." The bridge crew watched in silence as the Vex leader processed this information. The Dominion's strategy had always been the same: overwhelming force, brutal efficiency, and complete eradication. No species had ever survived a cleansing operation, let alone appeared at the heart of Vex territory afterward. "You will be destroyed," the High Commander stated matter-of-factly. "Your presence is an aberration." "Before you try," Thorne responded, "know that we've analyzed your defensive systems. We've studied your tactics. We've adapted." As she spoke, Tactical Officer Reed quietly confirmed. "Orbital defense grid schematics decoded. Shield frequencies identified. We have our window, Admiral." The High Commander's posture shifted subtly, a sign of discomfort in Vex body language that human intelligence had carefully documented. "You cannot hope to—" Thorne cut the transmission with a gesture. "Tactical positions. Execute Operation Lazarus." The Defiance surged forward, its engines flaring brilliant blue against the darkness. Around the planet, alarm systems blared as the impossible happened. A single human warship charged directly at the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. The first shots were fired, not from the Vex defenses, but from the Defiance. Precisely targeted energy pulses that no human vessel should possess streaked across space, striking key nodes in the defensive grid. Humanity's last stand had begun. The Vex Dominion had conquered over 800 worlds through methodical application of superior technology and uncompromising brutality. Their philosophy was simple: fear was the most efficient form of control. Yet as the Defiance executed a series of impossible maneuvers through the planet's defensive grid, High Commander Zex felt an unfamiliar sensation crawling along his spine plates. Doubt. "How are they penetrating our targeting systems?" he demanded. 6 arms working simultaneously across different control surfaces in the central command hub. Senior Tactician Mav analyzed the data feeds. "Unknown, High Commander. Their vessel is absorbing our scanning signals but emitting false returns. Our weapons cannot achieve lock." On the view screen, the human ship performed another reality-defying evasion, seemingly anticipating the firing pattern of the automated defense platforms. This was not merely good piloting. It was as if they knew exactly how the Vex combat algorithms worked. "Impossible," Zex whispered. The Vex had conquered every species they encountered through technological superiority. No race had ever reverse-engineered their systems. It was inconceivable. Meanwhile, aboard the Defiance, Navigation Officer Pax guided the warship through the deadly barrage with uncanny precision. Sweat beaded on his dark skin as his hands danced across the neural interface. Pattern Theta, forming. Up, he reported. 30 seconds to next barrage. Thorn nodded. Read, deploy countermeasures package 3. The tactical officer triggered the system. From the Defiance, hundreds of tiny objects scattered in a precisely calculated pattern. To Vex sensors, they appeared as debris, until they simultaneously activated, creating a web of electromagnetic distortion that temporarily blinded the nearest defense platforms. This was humanity's advantage. While the Vex built their empire through overwhelming force, humans had spent their entire existence adapting, improving, finding ways to overcome superior opponents. When the first Vex ships appeared in Earth's solar system, humanity hadn't cowered. They had studied, analyzed, and prepared. We've opened a corridor to low orbit, Admiral, Reed announced. Course is clear. Thorn's gaze remained fixed on the tactical display. Proceed with Phase 2. Deep within the Defiance, Chief Engineer Marcus activated the ship's most closely guarded secret. In the engine room, a crystalline structure pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Technology reverse-engineered from a damaged Vex scout ship recovered 3 years earlier. In the Dominion Command Center, alarms suddenly blared. Hi. Commander! The human vessel. It's projecting some kind of energy field. Zex watched in disbelief as the Defiance seemed to shimmer, its outline becoming indistinct. Then, impossibly, the ship split into 3 identical vessels, each moving in different directions. Decoys? He snarled. Negative, the sensor officer replied, panic evident in his voice. All 3 are generating mass readings and energy signatures. We cannot distinguish the original. The High Commander's hearts raced. This technology, matter replication on this scale, was theoretical even for the Vex. How had these humans, whose world had barely achieved interstellar travel, developed such capabilities? As the 3 identical warships descended toward different strategic targets on Dexar Prime, Zex made a decision that no Vex commander had made in 3 centuries of conquest. Deploy the planetary evacuation protocols, he ordered. And contact the Supreme Overlord. Tell him we face an unprecedented threat. For the first time in its history, the mighty Vex Dominion was preparing for the possibility of defeat. Dr. Lena Rivera had never intended to become the architect of an interstellar war strategy. Before the Vex came, she had been a behavioral xenobiologist specializing in cognitive pattern recognition. Now, standing in the Defiance's tactical center, surrounded by holographic displays of Vex formations, she was the reason humanity still had a fighting chance. Their response patterns are exactly as predicted, she observed, watching the Vex fleet reorganize around Dexar Prime. They're following Defense Protocol Epsilon. Captain Miro, head of intelligence, nodded. Just like the simulations, their entire military doctrine is built on unwavering adherence to established protocols. This was the fundamental difference that the Vex had never understood about humans. Where the Dominion relied on overwhelming technological superiority and rigid tactical doctrine, humans excelled at adaptation and improvisation. The Vex had conquered hundreds of worlds, but they had always been the superior force. They had never learned to be underdogs. Humanity had been fighting against the odds since climbing down from trees. Admiral, Dr. Rivera continued, we have approximately 18 minutes before they recognize the pattern disruption and adapt their strategy. Thorn studied the tactical display. The 3 Defiance vessels, the original and 2 quantum duplicates, had successfully scattered the Vex defensive formations. The duplication technology would only maintain cohesion for 22 minutes before the copies destabilized, but the psychological impact was devastating to the rigidly hierarchical Vex command structure. Proceed with deployment, Thorn ordered. Throughout, all 3 ships, special operations teams prepared for insertion. Unlike the massive armies the Vex deployed to crush resistance, these were small, elite units trained specifically for this mission. Each soldier carried a neural disruptor, devices designed to interface with and corrupt Vex communication networks. On Dexar Prime, panic spread through the ruling caste for the first time in generations. The planet's population had never experienced an attack. The concept was alien to them. Their world had been the untouchable center of absolute power for centuries. High Commander Zex struggled to maintain control as contradictory reports flooded in. The human ships were everywhere and nowhere, appearing and disappearing from sensors. Smaller craft were now deploying from all three vessels, each transmitting signals that confused and disrupted Vex communications. "This cannot be happening," Zex muttered, as his command center's systems began failing one by one. "They are primitive. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel." What the Vex commander couldn't understand was that humanity's apparent technological inferiority had been their greatest strength. When faced with the Vex invasion, humans couldn't match their enemy's power, so they studied, adapted, and found weaknesses where the Vex saw none. Commander Ash led the first team to reach the surface. Under cover of the confusion, they moved swiftly toward the central communication spire, the hub that connected Dexar Prime to the rest of the Dominion. "Team in position," Ash reported through her secure channel. Proceeding with infiltration. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Vex Empire maintained control through constant communication and surveillance. Cut off the head, and the body would be thrown into disarray long enough for the next phase. Dr. Rivera watched from the tactical center as dozens of small indicators showed human teams successfully breaching Vex facilities across the planet. "It's working, Admiral. Their response time is decreasing with each system failure." Thorne allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. "Begin countdown to convergence. All teams synchronize for Phase 3. As the operation unfolded with precision timing, the truth became increasingly clear to both sides. The Vex had ruled through fear and technological superiority, never needing to innovate or adapt. Humans had spent their entire existence doing exactly that. And now, at the heart of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, that difference would decide the fate of both species. The central communication spire of Dexar Prime stood 2 kilometers tall, a monument to Vex technological dominance. Its crystalline structure housed the quantum network that maintained the Dominion's iron grip across thousands of star systems. No enemy had ever set foot inside, until today. Commander Ash and her team moved silently through the labyrinthine corridors, their adaptive camouflage rendering them nearly invisible to Vex sensors. The air hummed with energy as data streamed through the very walls around them. "Junction point ahead," whispered tech specialist Gale, consulting the 3-dimensional map projected on his visor. "Primary quantum core is 3 levels down." Ash nodded. "Status of the diversion?" "Holding," came the reply from the Defiance. "Vex security forces are still responding to the decoy breaches in sectors 7 through 13. This was human warfare, not the overwhelming force favored by the poor Vex, but precision strikes at critical vulnerabilities. The entire invasion force numbered less than 200 operatives, deployed strategically across key installations. In orbit, Admiral Thorne monitored the operation's progress. 2 of the quantum-duplicated Defiance vessels were beginning to destabilize, their energy signatures fluctuating. They had served their purpose, drawing away the bulk of the Vex defensive fleet. "Quantum cohesion at 28%, reported Engineer Marcus. "Estimate complete breakdown in 7 minutes. Thorne's expression remained impassive. "Prepare for convergence on my mark." The plan had always been a calculated risk. The duplicate ships would collapse, releasing a massive energy surge that would temporarily disable nearby Vex vessels, creating a window for the real Defiance to execute the final phase. On the planet's surface, Ash's team reached the central core, a massive chamber where glowing crystalline structures pulsed with information flowing through the Empire. Gale connected their interface device, his fingers moving with practiced precision. "Upload commencing," he reported. 60 seconds to system integration. What the Vex could never comprehend was that humans had been preparing for this moment since first contact. While the alien empire saw only a primitive species to be crushed, Earth's best minds had been working tirelessly, developing countermeasures, studying Vex technology from salvaged wrecks, identifying the fundamental weaknesses in their seemingly perfect systems. The greatest of these weaknesses was pride. The Vex had been undefeated for so long that they had stopped looking for threats within their own technology. In the command hub, High Commander Zex was growing desperate. "Lock down all communication channels," Isolate the planetary network. Impossible. High Commander, his subordinate replied. The system is rejecting override commands. On every screen in the facility, a simple message began to appear. First in Vex script, then translated into hundreds of languages from across the conquered worlds. Fear is not control. Freedom is coming. The message spread across the Empire at the speed of quantum entanglement, impossible to stop or contain. With it came something the Vex had never anticipated. A code sequence that gave access to sealed information about the Empire's atrocities, broadcast simultaneously to every world under Dominion control. In orbit, Thorn gave the command. Execute. Convergence. The quantum duplicates of the Defiance simultaneously collapsed, releasing precisely calculated energy pulses that rippled through the Vex fleet. Ships tumbled powerless, their systems overloaded. In that moment of chaos, the true nature of humanity's plan was revealed. This was not simply a suicide mission of revenge. This was revolution. All teams, Thorn broadcast, initiate Phase 4. Activate the network. Across Dexar Prime, human operatives activated devices that began broadcasting on frequencies previously unused by the Vex. Direct communications to the subjugated species of the Empire, carrying detailed instructions and coordinates. The Defiance had not come alone. It had come as the vanguard. 6 months before Earth fell, the human expedition vessel Horizon had made an unexpected discovery while exploring the fringes of known space. A hidden outpost populated by refugees from a dozen different species, all survivors of Vex conquest. This chance encounter had changed everything. While the Dominion decimated human colonies one by one, a secret network formed across the galaxy. The Defiance mission wasn't a desperate last stand. It was the trigger for a coordinated uprising that had been meticulously planned across hundreds of worlds. As Vex communication systems across Dexar Prime failed, replaced by the Freedom broadcast, similar events unfolded throughout the Empire. Dormant resistance cells activated, armed with human-designed technology specifically engineered to counter Vex capabilities. In the tactical center of the Defiance, Captain Miro monitored the cascade of signals now flooding in from across the galaxy. It's working, Admiral. Uprising confirmed on 78 worlds and counting. Thorn nodded grimly. Earth might be gone, but humanity's legacy would be the liberation of 1,000 worlds. On the surface, Ash's team secured the communication core as Gale completed the upload. Firewall protocols disabled. The network is ours, Commander. The Vex had built their empire on unquestioned technological superiority. What they had never anticipated was that their technology could be turned against them. Human engineers, working alongside technicians from a dozen formerly conquered species, had created a backdoor into the very heart of the Dominion's communication network. In his command center, High Commander Zex watched in horror as reports flooded in from across the Empire. Simultaneous uprisings on hundreds of worlds, Vex control, systems failing, defense platforms turning against their operators. Centuries of absolute dominance were unraveling in hours. How was this possible? He demanded of the empty room, his subordinates having fled as the facility began to collapse around them. The answer came from an unexpected source, a direct communication to his personal channel. High Commander, Admiral Thorn's face appeared on his private screen. Your empire was built on fear. Fear only works when people believe they have no alternative. Zex's outer membrane pulsed with rage. You think this changes anything? The Dominion has ruled for millennia. One primitive species cannot undo that. Not alone, Thorn agreed. Which is why we didn't come alone. The screen split to show dozens of different alien faces, representatives of species long thought subjugated or exterminated by the Vex. Many wore adaptations of human military insignia. The Alliance of Free Worlds sends its regards, Thorny continued. Your empire falls today. As if to punctuate her words, the massive defense platforms orbiting Dexar Prime suddenly changed alignment, their weapons turning inward toward the planet's government district. This was humanity's true genius, not superior technology or military might, but the ability to unite, to form connections where the Vex saw only masters and servants. While the Dominion had conquered through division and fear, Humans had built an alliance through shared purpose and hope. The Defiance had been the visible spearhead, but behind it came hundreds of ships emerging from hiding across the galaxy. HD fleet assembled from the remnants of a dozen civilizations, united under human coordination. On the Defiance's bridge, Tactical Officer Reed reported, "Allied fleet emerging from hyperspace, Admiral. Phase 5 is commencing." Around Dexar Prime, space itself seemed to tear open as vessels of diverse designs appeared. Some sleek and advanced, others cobbled together from salvaged technology, all converging on the heart of the crumbling empire. Thorne opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Thorne. The path is clear. The heart of the Dominion lies exposed. Today, we reclaim our future." The coordinated attack that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Not through overwhelming force, but through precise surgical strikes at key Vex facilities, guided by the intelligence now flowing freely through the captured network. As the Allied fleet engaged the disorganized Vex defenses, the truth became undeniable. The empire that had ruled through fear for centuries was facing something it had never prepared for: hope. Beneath the gleaming spires and technological marvels of Dexar Prime lay the true source of Vex power, the subjugation chamber. Here, deep within the planet's crust, the supreme overlord of the Dominion connected directly to the Empire's vast network, issuing commands that shaped the fate of billions across the galaxy. No outsider had ever seen this place. Its very existence was classified at the highest levels of Vex hierarchy. Yet Lieutenant Commander Ash and her team now stood at its threshold, guided by intelligence gleaned from centuries of Vex communications, intercepted and decrypted by human analysts. "Confirming location," Ash reported through her secure channel. "We've reached the access point." Admiral Thorne's voice came through clearly, despite being in orbit above. "Proceed with caution, Commander. According to our intelligence, the chamber's defenses are unlike anything we've encountered." Ash nodded to her team. They had trained for this moment through countless simulations. Each member carried a specific component of the device that represented humanity's ultimate gambit. As they breached the final security barrier, the team entered a vast spherical chamber. At its center floated what appeared to be a Vex, yet unlike any they had seen before. Twice the size of normal specimens, with translucent skin revealing complex machinery integrated with biological components. Thousands of filaments extended from its body, connecting to terminals that lined the chamber walls. The Supreme Overlord, not merely the ruler of the Vex Dominion, but its living heart. "Organic technology," whispered Dr. Rivera through the comlink, watching through the team's visual feeds. "They've merged biological and technological evolution." The entity's 6 eyes opened simultaneously, focusing on the human intruders. Its voice resonated directly in their minds, bypassing their communication systems. "You have come far, humans, farther than any before you. Yet your journey ends here." Ash stood her ground. "We bring an end to your empire of fear." Fear. The Supreme Overlord's mental voice carried something like amusement. "Fear is merely an efficient tool for a greater purpose. We bring order to chaos, structure to primitive existence." Around the chamber, defensive systems began to activate. Not mechanical weapons, but fields of energy that distorted reality itself. The very air seemed to warp as the Overlord exerted its power. "Holding position," Ash reported as her team formed a defensive perimeter. "Preparing the device." This was the moment everything hinged upon. Months of planning, the sacrifice of Earth itself, all to reach this point, to face the entity that had orchestrated centuries of subjugation. The Supreme Overlord's mental probing intensified, testing the human's psychological defenses. "Your species intrigues us. So fragile, yet so persistent. What drives such determination in the face of inevitable defeat?" As the team assembled the components of their device, Ash responded, "Something you would never understand. Something no empire of fear can conquer." "And what might that be, human?" "Hope," Ash replied simply. "The belief that tomorrow can be better than today." The assembled device began to pulse with energy. Not destructive, but transformative. It wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It was a key, designed to interface with the Vex network at its source. In orbit, The Allied fleet had secured control of Dexar Prime's outer defenses. Admiral Thorne watched the operation unfold through tactical feeds, knowing that the true battle wasn't being fought with ships and weapons, but in that chamber deep below the surface. "All teams stand ready," she ordered. "The moment we receive confirmation, execute Phase 6. The Supreme Overlord, sensing the nature of the human device, intensified its attack. Energy surged through the chamber, as reality itself seemed to buckle under the entity's power. "Your device cannot interface with systems beyond your comprehension," it projected. "The network is an extension of my consciousness." Gale, bleeding from a wound on his forehead, completed the final connections. "That's exactly what we're counting on," he replied. The device activated with a pulse of energy that momentarily neutralized the Overlord's attacks. It wasn't attempting to destroy the network. It was opening a connection to it. A connection that would allow something unprecedented to enter the Vex collective consciousness. Not destruction, but truth. The device hummed with energy as it established connection with the Supreme Overlord's neural network. This was the culmination of humanity's grand strategy, not to destroy the Vex, but to transform them, to show them an alternative to rule through fear. "Connection established," Gale reported, his voice strained as he maintained the delicate systems. "Commencing data transfer." What flowed through that connection wasn't a virus or a weapon, but experiences, human experiences. Joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, love and loss. The full spectrum of emotion that drove human persistence in the face of overwhelming odds. The capacity for compassion that allowed cooperation instead of domination. The Supreme Overlord's body convulsed as the unfamiliar data flooded its consciousness. What is this invasion?" it projected, mental voice fragmented with confusion. "Understanding," Ash replied simply. "Something your empire has never attempted with the worlds. You conquered." Across the chamber, the entity's translucent form pulsed with chaotic energy as it processed the flood of new information. Memories of human children laughing, of hands joined across differences, of sacrifices made not from fear, but from love. In orbit, Admiral Thorne watched the readings from the planet's surface. Energy fluctuations stabilizing. The network is reconfiguring. This had always been humanity's true advantage. Not technology or military might, but emotional intelligence. The capacity to understand others, to form connections based on mutual respect rather than domination. It was the one thing the Vex, for all their advancement, had never developed. Throughout the Empire, the effects rippled outward through the quantum network. On thousands of worlds, Vex troops suddenly ceased their attacks as new directives flowed through their collective consciousness. Confusion replaced certainty as centuries of unquestioned purpose were suddenly challenged. The Supreme Overlord's voice, when it came again, carried something new: uncertainty. "Your species survived when all others submitted or perished. How? By understanding that strength comes not from fear, but from diversity," Ash explained. "Not from control, but from cooperation." The entity's form stabilized, its connection to the human device now a two-way exchange of information. "Your world is gone, yet you persist. You adapt. You hope." "That's what humans do," Ash replied. "We rebuild. We continue." Across the galaxy, the Alliance fleet secured key Vex installations. As resistance crumbled, the Empire built on fear was transforming before their eyes. Not collapsing into chaos as expected, but evolving into something new. In the command center of the Defiance, Admiral Thorne received word from the surface team. "Phase 6 complete. Admiral, the Overlord has accepted the interface." Around the tactical display, the bridge crew watched in amazed silence as Vex ships across the system powered down their weapons. The impossible had happened. Not victory through destruction, but transformation through understanding. 6 months after Earth's fall, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. 1 year later, Admiral Thorne stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, representatives from over 200 species, including reformed Vex delegates. The chamber had been constructed on a new world, jointly colonized by humans and members of the former resistance. Today we formalize what began with a single ship, she addressed the assembly. An alliance built not on fear, but on mutual respect and cooperation. Where the Vex Dominion had ruled through technological supremacy and rigid hierarchy, the new alliance embraced diversity of thought and approach. The former Supreme Overlord, now calling itself the Interpreter, had become instrumental in translating between wildly different species and perspectives. The Defiance, restored and repurposed, now served as a diplomatic vessel, carrying representatives between worlds that were learning to communicate after centuries of isolation under Vex rule. Commander Ash, promoted after the mission, stood at Thorn's side as the treaty was signed. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" she asked quietly. Thorn watched as human hands, Vex appendages, and the manipulators of a dozen other species applied their signatures to the document. "I hoped," she replied simply. "That's what carried us through. Not the certainty of victory, but the hope that something better was possible." As celebrations erupted across the chamber, Dr. Rivera approached with the former High Commander Zex, now serving as liaison between reformed Vex and the Alliance. "The quantum network is fully reconfigured," Zex reported. "The shared experiences continue to transform our understanding. We are grateful. It was perhaps the most profound victory in human history, not the defeat of an enemy, but the transformation of an adversary into an ally. The species that had nearly eradicated humanity had been changed by the very qualities they had dismissed as weakness. In the end, it wasn't human weapons that had toppled an empire, but human heart. The capacity to hope, to connect, to show compassion, even to those who had shown none. The uniquely human belief that tomorrow could be better than today. And across the galaxy, billions of beings who had lived in fear now experienced something new. The dawn of hope.